Hi there, coaches. We are on our final video, and we are on block 3, part 2, where we're going to be practicing the boundaries and de-escalation habits and skills that we've been talking about. And we can look at our journey that we've taken, and hopefully by now, you know that our main goals, two goals, are to embody secure attachment and then constantly balance structure and nurture for the kids as we are coaching them and also empowering them to improve. And so we're on our last session. And then what we will do is have a capstone in-person session where we get to go through some Q&A and then also role play on a lot of the skills that we're talking about. So remember, we've been through our journey talking about attachment styles and how they help us establish felt safety for the kids and that they can be rewritten. And so we're both helping ourselves and the kids uh, understand what healthy attachment looks like. And that we're always trying to keep in mind the fact that 5 healthy relationship skills are to give nurture and empowerment, to receive it well, to have a non shame based identity, and to negotiate for what you need without harming others. And we'll see some scenarios where that comes into play. But we've been talking the last 2 sessions about a bunch of tools. And so we understand how to set up conditions of practice and to manage some of the conditions of the game uh, with a intentional mindset. And then our engagement strategies are how we can behave and use our own behavior as coaches. And then we talked about using specific scripts for behavior and correction so that the kids have a common vocabulary for when it's needed, both across teams, across the club, and when they need it. And so there's going to be in addition to scripts that we might be teaching them about soccer. And then finally, this idea of a team check-in. So at least a few moments in the practice where we do review some of these scripts for them so they get to know the concepts well and so that we can begin to use them from practice to practice in game situation. And so we're also reminding ourselves that dysregulated behavior is um, is expressing a survival response in the kids and is not an attack at you. And so remember, when toddlers are crying and requesting help, they are looking for a stable and safe caregiver to assess the situation and help them out. So when we think through this survival response idea, the child or teen has sensed something that has threatened them. And that's often going to be as unique as a fingerprint, but with a little curiosity, we usually can figure it out. And so this is why we've been paying so close of attention to the concept of felt safety. So if there is bad behavior, dysregulation, and we're able to get the kids lid back down, and it is in the setting of a behavior that needs to be changed or modified, we can think through these 3 C's to make sure that we've done it effectively. So is the behavior changed? Do you have a sense that the child is going to try to do better about that particular behavior in the future? Are both parties content? And then has connection increased is what we're looking for. And then and then last week or last video, we looked at what does good responding look like. And there are a couple of things. First, if a behavior needs to be corrected, and we're talking in this case more like bad behavior, but it does match if we need to correct soccer behavior as well. So doing it immediately, but then thinking through our engagement strategies or tools, our coach structure voice and nurture voice. Do we need to cheer and be positive? Healthy touch, will that help us? Fist bumping, and then we can come at something in a playful tone, but not sarcastic, and then a mirroring tone. If someone is upset, we can kind of mirror that upset just to get their attention and connect. And then eye contact, and then scaffolding. We know where they need to grow and we can kind of nudge them in that direction. And then efficient, are we using the right levels of response? Mostly we'll be playful in our engagement, but if need be, we can escalate to choices and then also calming. But some circumstances require us to start calming before we can get to the other things. These are action oriented, and this is why last time we spent a lot of time on the scripts. Coach is boss, so that means we ask, we don't tell. We listen well, we have fun, we work hard, both ourselves and the team. And we can definitely speak up, but we do it with respect. And if we have to correct, we can guide kids to remember that they can redo things, they can make some choices, and they can ask for compromises, and that we praise them on the occasional times where we have to say no. And then the intervention is always leveled at the behavior so that we do not increase the shame in the kids. So one thing to remember is there is no perfect here. We, as coaches in a club, are on a journey. So that means that we get to share in each other's successes and challenges. So today we're going through a couple of scenarios that just to think through to get our coach brain going. And so we're going to try to just plan a practice with empowerment strategies. And so what we want to do is we want to have a practice plan, but we want to take a minute and think ahead and see if we can build in some flexibility. If we can allow the kids some choices, that will increase their engagement. So what I recommend also is that we show up early to get the field ready. The cones are laid out, the pennies are already pre-counted and laid out, water and snacks if we have them. And this will allow us to be ready to greet the kids when they arrive with that all-important physical touch, fist bumps, eye contacts, and just finding out about their days. And then the format that we use is um, uh, game form or modified game forms that lead into game forms. I used to think about it as play, practice, play. And that's when we're teaching the script of the day. And then we can also work in the behavioral scripts too, as we are getting kids used to the team culture. So plan your transitions in practice. And also, if you can, figure out a puzzle regarding the game that they need to figure out. Like if it's a passing drill, do you need to spread out? And then how do you defend? Think about using a lot of positive reinforcement. A lot of people notice this about me is I'll spend a lot of time encouraging the good things that I see, and just occasionally you'll hear a negative comment. And that is because kids require, for every bad comment, some experts say you need to praise them 7 times. And so then plan a check-in at the end and pick up the field. So that can be part of our value of sticking together. And then also talk about how kids liked the practice. I often think it's important to just make sure that they think that your voice levels have been good and that they enjoyed the practice. Again, involving them in the feedback actually helps increase their engagement. And so remember that we get to work in rituals. Artifacts kind of come with the soccer, but we use flows and transitions and completions, especially in drills. And then timings of feedback are super important. And then making sure the emotional climate, which is kind of the whole reason for this series, is to make sure that they feel safe and that they can make mistakes without expecting harm and or being severely verbally warned or corrected. And so these are the things that help remind us of what we can do. And then, of course, the engagement strategies are voice, whether it's a nurture voice or it's a structure voice, and then being playful, mirroring their energy, getting eye contact, and then scaffolding them. So, as we get into more of the behavioral correction side of things, I want us to remember this mnemonic. I just call it CBT go. And then remember to ask, how did it go? And so the first C is see what's up. So if you see a behavior, think about three C's. So I need to go see what's up. And that is, I'm curious, that's my posture. I'm looking for the context of what's going on, and I'm trying to connect with the kids at the same time. And then step two, especially if you've seen a fairly severe behavior, is to breathe. And that means remind yourself that you're okay and that these kids will be okay one way or another. Then step three, think about your tools and your plan. And those are, of course, are going to be the engagement strategies and scripts. And then finally, step four is you got this, and that means go deal with it in that ideal way, that immediate, direct, efficient, action-oriented, and leveled at the at the behavior, not the child type way. And then step five, at some point, think back and find out how it went. In your debrief period, is it changed? Is the behavior changed? Are both people content? And then do you feel more connected now than you did before? Okay, so in our first example, player suddenly walks away from practice with his head down. So then in our go see what's up, do you understand the external and internal experience of the kid? As a coach in practice, did you see anything develop? Did you hear kids talking to each other? Try to just open your mind to what may be going on in the situation. Remember to breathe and check in with yourself. You're okay, and you need to be okay, so the kid's okay. And just remind yourself that this is not really a threat. This is a behavior that you get the opportunity to help the kiddo with. Then remember your tools and your plan. Which engagement strategy are you going to use? My guess would be to start with a nurture voice and maybe a healthy touch, pat on the back, get some eye contact, and let them know that everything's okay. You're there to help, and for them to kind of tell you what they need. And just a reminder that sometimes if something traumatic just happened with a kiddo, they may not want to tell you, or if they do tell you, they get more upset. So again, you may have to calm them first and then talk about things. And then as you're assessing, decide what script is going to be used to help pull them back in. So speaking up with respect, having fun. So I see that you're not having fun. What's going on? And then if there is correction, we'll get to this. So you can have redos and choices and ask for compromises. So remember your levels of response as well. Um, Sometimes in this circumstance, it's not necessarily playful, but again, just being calm and approaching the player because they may honestly, this walking away could be flight, right? So fight, flight, and freeze. So they could be in flight and they may be a little unstable. So then you got this. Hey, I saw you walk away. What's going on? Or tell me what I can do to help. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you sensed out there, and then I can help. Followed by, you can always remember to go get a drink, bring them a water bottle, or advise them to go get the water bottle and come back. So our next example is in a soccer game near the end of the game, players were not listening to the coach. And so a quick empowerment gut check. How has your voice been and the conditions throughout the game? I think in the circumstance that I witnessed, it was the first time the kids had played 4v4, and I think they were rather tired from the circumstance. And so that really got in the way of them listening. So then notice and wonder what's going on rather than see and react. And then like I said, physical exhaustion might be playing a role. And so your immediate options, if yelling and directing louder are not helping, then it's pretty easy to just shift and try to cheer for them when you see good things that they're doing and encouragement. So that at least lets them know that you're present and that they're still safe, even though they may sense that they're not doing all that well. And then after the game, you can even just say, hey, I noticed with your nurturing voice that we were not connected in those last few minutes of the game. What was going on? And then if they're safe for feedback, they can tell you. If you get a sense that there's more going on, you can have a one-on-one with the captains and see what their thoughts are, if that's appropriate to where you're at. And then finally, in your own debrief, do you have a sense that you can change or something changed, that the kids are content and that you guys are more connected? And then do you have new ideas moving forward? And so that's one way that you can kind of look at this scenario. Okay, next we have a player who gets upset after a referee makes a bad call. So first of all, first step, see what's up. Number one, thinking about this, have we dealt with this scenario in practice? Have we linked this scenario to scripts? If not, if it's the first time we're dealing with it, we may just have to kind of get through the moment and make sure that the kid is fine and able to stay in the game. So then I call this the lid check. What's their level of dysregulation? If they're really dysregulated and not playing well, then clearly we need to sub them off. And so some of this boils down to how well do you know the player, and then if they come off and they're really angry, be ready for that. And remember to breathe, that you're not under threat, that you're helping the kid with their behavior. So you may need to use a structure voice if they're upset, and then take that out on you and just say, hey, look, you can sit for a minute or get a drink and talk to me. Which is it going to be? You let me know. And then that's a good structure way to meet where they're at, because it lets them know that they're not in huge trouble. You're not yelling at them and you're willing to talk. You could be playful in the minute if need be, if there's something, if it's appropriate, and then kind of go from there. But think about the script that we would talk about. It's okay to speak up, but make it with respect, okay? And the other thing is we need to work hard, even if there's a bad call, and you may think about that in practice. And then levels of response, again, if they're coming off really hot, you don't want to kind of come off playful because it won't be well attuned. But you may need to be calming with a little bit of the structured voice that I mentioned. Okay, so you got this. You've done some pre-planning. Hey, are you doing okay? You call out on the field. Do you want to stay in or sub? And so you're giving them a choice, and then they say, I'm going to stay in. And then you can use your coach structure voice. Okay, if you're not playing well, I may have to sub you off. So I'll be watching for a few minutes. And then, so you guys are connected in this circumstance. And then, even by talking with the player, you get a sense of their lid. So if they're not talking at all, you may need to sub them off and make sure that they can calm down. And then, of course, post game, we can discuss the script that we're thinking about. I like the fact that we have to work hard even when bad calls happen. And we can just kind of say, look, games are like life, they're not always fair, but we still need to manage the game as a team. And, treating refs badly is not a point of negotiation. And we can use our coach structure voice with that. So the debrief is, do you have a sense that when this happens again, is the behavior going to be changed at all? And then are you content with how you did? And do you get the sense that the kiddo is content as well? And has connection increased? And then any new ideas for the future? Okay, let's keep escalating our circumstances here. So we have a player who pushes a player on the field. I'm going to say that this is in practice, and they push him in the back and they're yelling at you about him as he storms off. So first step, see what's up. So be curious, stay connected, and then look at kind of figuring out the context of what's going on. So how close were you watching? Did you see any verbal altercations before this? And therefore understand how to address it. Lid check. Obviously, the scenario is the lids are off. So the question then becomes, what engagement strategy are we going to use? And the clear idea here is calming. We don't need to tell them how awful it is that you just put hands on someone. The first thing that we need to do is to get them calm. And then once they're calm, that cortex comes back down and they can begin to think socially again. But as this is happening, remember to take a breath and to realize that you're not under threat and that you can think through the tools and your plan. And in this case, um, uh, I'm going to add a concept called rupture that requires repair. So when we have actively hurt another person in this way, there needs to be repair. And so we can use our engagement strategies for that. And that's when we're going to use this idea of the band system. So where we have a white band, a black band, and a gold band, that implies skill, fitness, and leadership, and that it might be on the line to demote them if they do not repair well as they go through calming and looking at what happened. Okay, so you got this. We're going to do something about it. Immediately, we're going to go into calming engagement and hopefully be able to move into playful while giving the structure of needing the repair to happen. And then, are the lids down? We might need to give it time. And then, like I said before, we may link the situation to the playing time bands. And then at the end of practice, check on the fact that there might be repair. And you may need to say, hey, you guys both need to check in with me before leaving. All right, and one real life example that we're going to talk through is two players are feeding off each other as they walk off the field, screaming at the other team. They're totally unhinged as they're walking to the car. So, first of all, in our see what's up, what's the context? What's can we be curious about what's going on, or have you been tracking the situation the whole time? And the question is, are there legit concerns? Because that's going to help uh, when you talk with the kids. So, are they in fight or flight? Is this a new behavior? Have we talked about it before? Is their lid off or on? And in this case, the lids are off, but you do have this sense that there's a willful part to this behavior, which again requires the repair. So, as we're thinking through all these things, we want to then breathe and realize what's the threat assessment here? And that could be the club image, parents are watching, and then we don't want to add additional dysregulation into the circumstance if we don't have to. And so again, we've been trying to prevent coach dysregulation, and this would be one of those circumstances where it's important. So then we think through the tools in our plan. The level of response clearly needs to be calming engagement. So again, we're not looking to say rules at this point. We need to connect and then help de-escalate and to get that lid down. So we can use a structure voice to get attention, and then maybe use some healthy touch, a pat on the back, pat on the shoulder, some eye contact as we're talking, and try to get where they're coming from. But again, if you get a sense that it escalates the situation, you may need to distract into another topic for a minute. Okay, so as all this is running through your mind, you got this. Let's see how we do. So immediately you go to connect. Hey guys, let's chat for a second. And you're looking for some eye contact or matching some of their energy level, not necessarily the negativity. Wow, guys, that's a lot of energy. Tell me more. So you're actually getting them to use their words. Because remember, it's okay to speak up, but we got to do it with respect, guys. You're representing the club right now, so let's talk about this. And then at the next practice, we can talk about when the lids are completely down, the teaching moment, and connecting it to the scripts and even the band system. And if we can decide if we see that again, there's going to be a consequence for playing time. And then what about the repair? In some cases, do we need to apologize to the other team? Do we need to apologize to the parents? That's something that the coach and the kids can work on together. And then finally, again, our debrief. Has something changed? Do you have a sense that if this happens again, it's going to be better? Are you content? Are the kids content? And then is there a connection and has that increased? And now in this case, we're going to add the C of consequence. And so, do we have any new ideas that stem from this scenario? Because these things are going to crop up and we may have never dealt with them before, but they always give us a chance to think through how we want to function as a club. All right, so that's it. We've been talking about secure attachment. We've gone through some pretty significant scenarios. And again, there's no perfect way to handle them, but if we commit to always trying to sort out a better way, we will get there in time. And then we'll be scheduling soon the in-person session to role play our engagement and then setting and enforcing boundaries and doing a little de-escalation with each other. So looking forward to that. So please bring your questions and we'll put all of this to the test. Thanks for your attention. Take care, guys.